Hi, Ariana. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing good as well. Thank you very much for being a guest in our podcast.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
so happy to be
yeah,
here.
thank you very much. I think we can start the conversation by getting some introduction, you introducing yourself. Uh, how does it sound?
Sure.
Yeah.
Um, okay. Hi, I'm Ariana. I recently graduated from Stanford this past winter. I'm
Mhm.
currently working at a tech company in the Silicon Valley, and I was kind of raised here. And I guess my fun fact is that I actually transferred schools. So I transferred into Stanford rather than going directly there. And that's about it.
Mhm. Okay, cool. Um, First of all, one of the questions that really got me like excited and really interested is what inspired you to go into Stanford and actually pursue a career in technology?
Yeah, I think that when you are, I mean, there's a lot, right? So I guess I'm a first generation student and I didn't really know a lot of universities. I only knew the
Hmm.
ones around me and the ones with really big names. And so when I was in community college, I kind of thought I was just going to go to like a UC close by, a
Hmm.
California university. And after I applied, I kind of thought like maybe I could try Stanford. It feels like a smaller environment. It feels
Yeah.
maybe like there might be more opportunity. And at the time, I wanted to study law. Um,
Hmm.
so they're pretty good for that, and like have a pretty good political science system. But once I got into Stanford, I realized that there are so many other ways to make the impact that I want to make, and maybe do that more efficiently than
Hmm.
taking the law school route. So that's yeah, that's sort of how
Yeah.
I found myself in more of like a startup environment and mindset. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Talking about startups, how do you think like universities such as Stanford are uh, impacting students' mindset on building a company? Because when I was at Stanford, in our previous conversation, I mentioned that there is some certain vibe that you feel in the university, in the campus, that you want to build something, but you don't want to what to build actually. Um, how do you think university and its resources are being allocated for the students so they can either go to the tech or build their own thing?
hmm It's a good question. I think everyone's experience is going to be a little bit different, especially
Mm-hmm.
based on maybe the major that you are studying.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, if you're a computer science major like MS&E, you have a pretty
Okay.
direct route into entrepreneurship if you want. But the the general kind of course structure is that you are incentivized to take classes outside of your major.
Okay.
And so there's a lot of classes offered for like entrepreneurship or just hearing entrepreneurs come speak. And there's a lot
Mm-hmm.
of, I think, access. And so sometimes like the biggest barrier is just not even knowing where to start or like what to that you can even maybe if you're non-technical that you can be a part of a startup or that you could be in that environment. And so I think just
Mm-hmm.
having access to people, access to classes, access to professors who have
Mm-hmm.
done it before, I think that's a really big part of it. And then indirectly, I think having that background, you can kind of find your way easily into a startup. And
Mm-hmm.
like once you've done one, if it is for you, I think you kind of
Yeah,
catch on to it and you want to keep doing it. Yeah.
exactly. I guess the startup company founders, they basically come and visit Stanford and try to recruit. I
Try to
guess.
recruit, try to
Yeah,
get you to use their products. Yeah, like it's
yeah, that's the fun part,
good.
testing part. Yeah. Um, One of the things that really got me when I was in the US is um, the direct connection between um, building a startup and um, uh, the exact courses that you take at university, do you think that they in some sense affect how you build your startup? What I'm trying to say is, if you imagine one person went to Stanford, the other person went to some unknown school. Do you think that there is some privileges in terms of the knowledge and networking opportunities that university basically makes it more feasible for the students?
I think if you're looking just on a surface level of like
Mm-hmm.
comparisons, there are a lot of schools that have maybe like, okay, you study economics, a lot of your courses are just economics, and there's not maybe a lot of room to
Mm-hmm.
explore some of the other courses. Being more of like a liberal arts education, I think Stanford gives
Mm-hmm.
you more space to explore. So I think if you really wanted to look just in like the confines of a university, technically, yes. And then of course, like you have access to your alumni network,
Exactly.
regardless of what school you went to. But I also think that like at this point, when there's LinkedIn and when there's like all these free courses, and
Exactly.
even
Yeah.
Stanford offers free courses, like that it
Be
doesn't
that.
need to be
Yeah.
like a limiting factor. But yeah, if you only wanted to do like the minimum,
Yeah.
yeah,
Got it. Got it. Got it. So you've been in the startup, and I think now you work in a more uh, non startup tech company, which is basically much bigger than a startup. What do you think
yeah.
was which was the the part that you really enjoyed in startup and that you really enjoy in being a tech company, and you really hate being in a startup? So there should be something.
I think what I really liked about getting to work at a startup was just feeling like everything that you're doing, you can very easily see the impact and you
Hmm.
can see
Okay.
the effect that it has. Um, that's really cool. I think at a bigger tech company, there might be things you're doing that feel not necessary, but because anytime a company becomes a corporation and is like public,
Exactly.
you
Yeah.
have to you get stuck in the bureaucracy,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah. Yeah. I get it. I get it, because my opinion is that you have to sell before becoming a corporation. If you get like if you become a corporation, the innovation goes into probably gets a bit faded uh, among all the, yeah, as you mentioned, bureaucracy. But yeah, um,
Yeah.
so what didn't you like about being in a startup? I mean the
So I think I thought that I didn't like the sort of, I mean, basically there's like forever things to do. And sometimes that can feel overwhelming. But realizing now, there's always going to be things to do, even if you are working at a bigger company. It's just like if that's the kind of
exactly.
person that you are. So
Hmm.
I think in hindsight, it's better to have those things be like impactful things that are building rather than like silly things that you just sort of are stuck doing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, if I could
Yeah.
tell my past self, yeah.
All right. Got it. Got it.
Right.
So in general, do you think the Silicon Valley is what it is in the surface, or you think that it can be improved, or do you think that it really encapsulates all the um, previous sense of it? Like, I know we are in an age that we don't know what happened like 30 or 40 years ago, but at least what from the information that you have, do you think that Silicon Valley accepts inclusivity, diversity at the moment? Uh, what do you think about that? What is your, or what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say like to your point, being pretty young, I grew up around here, but I wasn't like
Mm.
really looking at the tech or working in tech, and my family doesn't. Um, I think that maybe it's, I mean, yes, like VCs are here, money is here,
Exactly.
but it
Yeah.
might be a little bit overrated from the outside. I guess don't like,
Hmm.
not in a harsh way, but just like, okay, just because you see like huge companies here like Facebook and Amazon, and like it doesn't mean that that's perfect. Or just because you see that like there's people online doing like a day in their life and it looks so cool, it doesn't mean that that's really how it is. And I don't
Hmm.
think that like, I very much don't think you need to like be here in order to
Exactly. Yeah.
do
To build a company.
do well. Yeah, I
Yeah.
would, it just, it, all of that stuff looks maybe nicer. I think maybe it feels almost like, yeah, like if you're at Stanford, it's probably easier, right, to access VCs. It's probably
Yeah.
easier to meet other entrepreneurs, but also there's the internet. So you're
Yeah.
not
Exactly.
necessarily limited. Yeah.
But also, if you build something, I think it's easier just to go to the campus and to talk to people, because I think they would be too open-minded to try things which are crappy. Uh, they've basically the applications that are full of bugs. I don't think that they would. I mean, the level of acceptance of something would be like the quality in terms of the quality would be that high in the campus
Yeah.
itself.
I think that is a good point. Like here, it's pretty commonly understood what a startup is, what a VC is. I mean, not everybody, obviously, but it's just more, I think, common in the culture. And I mean, something like for as a personal experience, like when you tell people who don't know what a startup is, like, oh, I'm going to work on a startup, or I'm working here, and they don't know the name, maybe they're confused, or they think you're like
Hmm.
being a little bit silly, or like not, you're like lost.
Yeah,
But
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
here I think people would be like, oh, that's so
yeah,
cool. Like, what's
yeah,
your startup about, right? So
yeah,
I think that's a very good point. You have a little bit ease of access. But
yeah. That's definitely the thing, because when we it's a bit different in Europe and in the US, because I think Europe is much more conservative in terms of trying new things, but in US, um, users are more willing to accept, as I mentioned, crappy things to test it. Yeah, maybe who
yeah.
knows? Maybe that may become something big one day. Uh, what do you
That's a
think
good point.
that you could advise for person who wants to study in the US or wants to work at tech companies in the US? Um, we'll come to the topic about your ideas of starting a company, a startup by yourself. But first, I think the audience would love to hear your thought about that 2 points.
I have a lot of thoughts on
Yeah.
studying in the US. Um, like the topic of international students is very close to me. And I think the one thing I would say as advice is like, if you have a desire to do it, you should do it, because there the sort of experience that you get will be invaluable. But I think it's important to understand that it's going to be really hard. Um, it's it, like
Definitely.
it's not going to be perfect, it's not going to be wonderful, it's going to be hard to get into some schools, it's going to be overpriced, um, it's going to be really hard
Hard to
to get a
study.
job, hard to study, hard to make money because you have all these rules, hard to stay in the US after you graduate. But again, my partner is an international student, and I think like for him the takeaway was like it was really hard, but the way that you grow and like the experience is invaluable, but it
Hmm.
is really hard. So it's just,
Yeah.
it's good to go
Yeah.
into it knowing what to expect. But I think it's worth, if it's like a dream or it's a desire, like it's worth trying and coming and experiencing. Um,
Yeah.
and then yeah, just know what's
Yeah.
in store for you.
Yeah. I think that's those are pretty solid uh, points that you mentioned. And most of the time people are what holds people back are the like a psychological barrier that they think that they don't have or own specific technical skills or something that might help them get into that. What do you think about that? I mean, uh, are all students studying at Stanford or other like top university geniuses, or uh, Like, what do you think about that? Because most of the time,
Yeah.
well, Stanford is a top tier school, like along with Harvard and other ones, and people think that it takes more than grades and scores, test scores, just to get into that schools.
Yeah, I think that's like two questions. So it does take more than grades and test scores. And as an immigrant, I didn't know that. And that's why I went to community college after high school. A lot of
Hmm.
schools, except ones with like very large acceptance rates, are going to be looking for more than just your test scores and your grades, which
Yeah,
is very different than schools in like Latin America or in Europe, that maybe are really just looking at like A levels or looking at exams. Here it is going to be like, what did you do in your free time? What sports did you do? Did you try to like tutor people? Did you start a
yeah.
nonprofit? Like, it's kind of crazy, but it does look at like involvement in your community. And I think that's kind of good, but I mean, like, because at the end of the day, like some people will be really good at grades and really
Yeah,
good at tests, and other people will be good at the other things. It's kind of a balance of the two. But I don't think that like you, just because you don't have technical skills or you don't think you're like the smartest
yeah,
person in the world, like, yes, there are people who are definitely incredibly intelligent. Like, there are people who somehow do things that you're like, how do you have the same 24 hours as me? But that's not everybody. A lot of people just like do have done things like you've gotten good grades, you've studied, and then you've done things on the side that are interesting to you. And yeah, like I don't know, there are a lot of people who like got in and
yeah,
they're like, I don't know how I got in, but here I am.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
sure.
yeah,
Because
so it it is a lot.
yeah,
Go
yeah,
ahead. Sorry.
I get it. Because once I read in a paper, in a newspaper actually, that the guy who climbed to the Everest 3 times in his lifetime.
Oh,
He was like 25 or 26. He had all the scores, everything. And I mean, from the perspective of the admissions, that should be the top person. Like, if he could climb to the Everest, I think the person has a will, in a sense. But they didn't
mhm.
accept him, and that really like puts into perspective that the schools are looking into too many things rather than some certain achievements that you have.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, your points are really to the point. Um, Lastly, I mean, we are pretty much wrapping up the conversation. What can you recommend to those people who just starting something? I mean, it can be studying, it can be a small startup, it can be anything, and especially the generations that, I mean, they are a bit different generation, I would say, in terms of reacting to the things. What can you recommend?
Yeah, I think that what I've realized doing a variety of different things is you will only stick to the things you actually enjoy and actually
Hmm.
like. So if you're building something that you don't care about, or you're studying something that you don't care about, it's going to be so much harder and it's going to be so much less fulfilling. And there's not really a point. So I think if you can take time with yourself like every once in a while and just understand why are you doing what you do every day,
Hmm.
and just try to like realign yourself to do things that you actually get excited to do
Yeah,
during the day, that's going to help you a lot more than forcing yourself to build or study something you don't enjoy.
yeah, I think that that would definitely be a good point, because even people personas among my friends and among my schoolmates, I can see that most of them had really high scores at university. They were on the top, but at some point they didn't uh, uh, take the enough risk, I guess. That may be
Mm,
one of the things. Maybe you have to be willing to take a risk at some point, and just
that's a
go
good point.
all in maybe. If I mean, there is no point to be regretful for the things that you do at college, the 4 years. It's a great
Oh yeah.
opportunity to do. I mean, I've been in the campus of Berkeley, and before being there, I was thinking that all the um, things that we saw in the movies, like all the houses that students are basically gathering, it was a bit of a myth. But we were in a party, and I definitely understood that it is not a myth. It's actually people are getting connected and talking to each other. They start some interesting companies. So yeah, I think that's pretty much a pretty much good information for the people who are going to listen to our conversation.
Awesome.
I hope that we will have another conversation sometime in our lifetime.
I'm sure we
Because
will.
I really like your energy, and all the information that you give. I think would be useful for the users, for everyone who is going to listen. So yeah, thank you very much, and I wish you a great weekend for the weekend is coming. So yeah, enjoy
Yeah.
it, and talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thank,
Thanks for having
thank
me.
you. Thank you. Bye.